spiritual advisor. She tells me when the vibes are off. And right now, Richard, your vibes are very square. Richard stood up, looking at his watch with a sudden urgency. You know, Jeanne, I just remembered I have a very important memo to file. Perhaps we should do this another time. Or never. Never might be better. As Richard fled out the door, Jack pulled the snorkel off his head and grinned. Vibes are off, Jack asked Chrissy. That was genius. I wasn't joking, Chrissy said, hugging the puppy. She really didn't like his suit. She said it tasted like cardboard. Johnny collapsed onto the sofa, laughing until her sides ached. Thank you, both of you. I think I'm officially undateable in Richard's eyes now. It's our specialty, Jack said, Boeing, the Three's Company Protection Service. We save you from the boring, one beige suit at a time. Chapter 15, The Unending Saga. As the weeks turned into months, the inhabitants of apartment 201 began to realize that their lives were no longer just a series of episodes. They were a saga. The 1970s were rolling on. The world was changing outside their windows. But inside the avocado green walls, the heart of their home remained the same. They were a family of choice, a group of misfits who had found a way to make the impossible work. They had survived Stanley's plumbing, Helen's romantic advice, the giant's wrath, and the detective's skepticism. They had learned to laugh at the disasters and treasure the small, quiet moments of connection. To us, Jack said one Friday night, raising a glass of wine as they sat on the balcony, watching the neon lights of Santa Monica flicker to life. To us, Jeanne and Chrissy echoed. Downstairs, the sound of Stanley's television drifted up the theme song of a detective show he'd seen a dozen times. In the apartment next door, music played, a bass-heavy disco track that made the walls vibrate. But on the balcony of 201, there was only the sound of their laughter and the steady, comforting rhythm of the ocean. They were Three's Company, and in the great, messy, beautiful tapestry of life in Santa Monica, there was nowhere else they'd rather be. End of part 1. The Trio of Apartment 201, a novelization. Chapter 1, The New York Hurricane. The morning sun over Santa Monica was usually a blessing, but for Stanley Roper, it was merely a spotlight on the dust he hadn't yet vacuumed. He stood in the kitchen of his ground-floor apartment, nursing a lukewarm cup of instant coffee and listening to the rhythmic clack-clack-clack of his wife, Helen, filing her nails. "Be quiet, Helen," Stanley hissed, his voice a gravelly whisper. "You're gonna wake Karen." Helen didn't even look up. Filing my nails is gonna wake up your knees. It's not the filing, Stanley, it's the breaking. Every time you break a nail, you swear loud enough to wake the dead. Oh, so that's what got you up. Stanley grunted, adjusting his belt over his slightly protruding stomach. Just hold it down, will you? The girl flew in from New York. She's exhausted. You've heard of jet lag, haven't you? Heard of it. Helen sighed, finally putting the file down. I married it. You've been in a state of jet lag since the Eisenhower administration. Karen, Stanley's niece, was the reason for the current state of martial siege. To Stanley, she was a fragile porcelain doll that needed to be kept in a lead-line box. To Helen, she was a vibrant young woman being smothered by an overbearing uncle. She's trying to adjust to living the life of a nun, Helen continued, her eyes sparkling with the familiar mischief that kept her going through 20 years of marriage to a man whose idea of a wild night was a double episode of Beretta. What's that supposed to mean? Stanley asked defensively. You never let her out of your sight. You're more like her jailer than her uncle. It's embarrassing, Stanley. That's ridiculous. Stanley paced the small kitchen. She's having a good time. I've been a world-class host. She's having a boring time, Helen countered. Stanley stopped dead, offended. Boring? How can you say that? Didn't I take her to Disneyland? Didn't I take her to the museum? Didn't I walk out to the end of the pier with her? Didn't I tell her every night about my experiences in the war? You call that boring, huh? Helen stared at him for a long beat, her expression flat. Ellen, Ellen, Stanley barked, confused by her silence. Oh, sorry, Stanley, she replied with a dry smirk. I must have drifted off just thinking about those war stories. The tension in the Roper household was a permanent fixture, but upstairs in apartment 201, the atmosphere was entirely different. There, three young people, Jonna Wood, Chrissy Snow, and Jack Tripper were navigating the complexities of a platonic Three's Company arrangement that was, for the 1970s, scandalous. To keep the lease, they had convinced Stanley that Jack was disinclined toward women. It was a lie Jack had to live every single day, often to his own frustration. Chapter 2, The Bribe and the Birthday. While Stanley worried about Karen's virtue downstairs, Jack Tripper was in the upstairs kitchen, wrestling with a cake. It was Jeanette's birthday, and as the resident culinary student, the pressure was on. Chrissy Snow, a blonde whirlwind of innocence and accidental double entendres, burst into the room. Hey, I got the cake. Jack looked up, flour dusting his nose. Where's the birthday girl? Oh, She's in the kitchen keeping an eye on your birthday dinner, Chrissy said, then paused.